Introduction. Kevin, just to follow up on that, as white hats, when we deal with coaches, anytime we can deal with a coach, I've always found it's a good thing if we don't go face to face. If I got to go see a coach and talk with him, if I can kind of nudge around and get a 45-degree angle, or better yet, stand shoulder to shoulder and talk with him, it makes it look like we're carrying on an intelligent, decent conversation. If we're front to front and I got a coach doing this at me, immediately to anybody who's there, that looks like I'm being lectured to. That's like I'm being talked down to, and it doesn't make me look good. And as a white hat, I was all about making me look good, because after all, it was the show for me. Okay, that was my attitude, maybe that's not quite right. But if we can avoid those confrontations, halftime, same kind of thing. A coach wants to talk to you, tell that coach, and I've seen it at prep bowls, where a coach and a white hat will stand on the field while everybody's leaving and talk, and it just doesn't look good. If a coach wants to talk to you at halftime, tell him you'll meet him in the end zone, you'll meet him by his shed, you'll meet him by his bus, but don't stand on the field. It's not good communication, and it's not effective, and it sends a bad message to everybody looking. I'm Pat Whalen. I'm retired. I miss seeing you guys every Friday night. I miss the field. But I'm happy I had the time on the field that I did, and I'm happy you guys get to spend it every Friday night. I'm speaking today with a couple of guys who were big hitters. I'm kind of feeling like the always dependable Kenny J. Remember Saturday Night Wrestling? And Kenny J got his ass kicked all the time and lost. The other guys were interviewed and talked about how Geritol beat Kenny J. I got the Kenny J feel working up here, and I'll try and work past that. So, here's my connection with these two guys. When I came into the MIAC as a white hat, about 2000, I wanted to get better, and I wanted to go to a camp. And I went to Rick Kruger's camp, and he did that with Dick Honig. And Bill Lamonier was there, and I listened to him for 2 days, 3 times in a row. And I gotta tell you, the guy is sharp. He knows his stuff, and he made me such a better official. Just being around him, just getting tips from him, standing on the field and talking about plays. He and Bernie Kukar helped me a lot. It was of tremendous value for me to be there. So I'm publicly thanking you for that. That helped me a ton. Thanks. Second guy, Fred. Fred Bryant worked in the MIAC with me. 2002, we had a playoff game at Cole. He came along as the alternate. It's 5 degrees, it was 20 below. He's standing on the sidelines, looked like the Michelin Man. He had every coat that we had along on. Did nothing but stand there and freeze his butt off. But he had a play that he helped me on, and he helped me become a better white hat. I had an intentional grounding that I wasn't sure of. I went and asked my wing. He said the ball didn't cross the line of scrimmage. The guy was in the pocket. I got intentional grounding. I come back. I had no clue where he threw that ball from. None. I had a 20-yard gap. I'm going, help me, somebody. And there's Fred on the sideline. All right, we're going to put it on the 34-yard line where Fred pointed to. And afterwards, on the bus ride, on the van ride home, we had large glasses of Kool-Aid. It was very fun. Fred said to me, as an umpire, he said, you know, this is a good tip for you. You might want to, when you have a play where the quarterback throws a ball like that, and you're not going to be sure if it's going to be an intentional grounding or not, you might want to just drop a beanbag. Throw the beanbag down there. Look around. If there's nothing there, come back and pick up the beanbag. If you got a foul, now you can come back and drop your flag very unobtrusively when we got a play like that, we just drop the flag. We don't throw a Roman candle, but drop your flag where you got your beanbag. It works. Freddie, you were a better white hat in that game than I was. And I thank you for that. And that's how I remember that guy. So I'm with a couple of classy guys. Here's what I want to talk about. And I'm going to try not to go the full 2 hours. Probably just an hour or 3. I want to talk about my formula for success. How does one advance? How does one get gains? How does one establish short-term goals? I want to get on a crew. After you're on that crew, what are the long-term goals? I want to get a good schedule. I want to work better games. I want to work a playoff game. I want Kevin Merkel and Bob Meslow to know who I am and maybe get a prep bowl game. Here's my magic formula for success. I wrote this down. I wrote 20 pages of notes, and then I came back to this. My magic formula is know the rules, know the system, develop your communication skills, and assess, critique, and improve yourself. Those 4 things were my magic formula for what I considered success for me. All right, I'm going to talk about 10 things that coincide with those. One needs to make a plan, figure out how to do things. The first plan I had involved who was I going to work with. That starts easy. Typically, you're on a crew and somebody retires. Mine was a guy by the name of Bill Kinley from down south. And Bill said, Adam, I'll have you take over the crew. Wait a minute. You're going to have me take over the crew? Should I be flattered here, or how should I handle this? And he said, well, don't be flattered because the other 2 guys are complete idiots, so you're the only one left. So that's how I became a white hat. And that's how I started with my people. But you progress. The crew changes, you move along, and you try and build a better crew. And I don't know what that magic formula is for doing that, but you'll look for people who look good, who are committed to the game, people within your association typically, who you feel can help you. Can they run? Do they have decent judgment? Are they good people? Are they going to show up for the game? And can they get better? Are they willing to get better? Are they willing to commit to the game? So the people that you bring in with you are really important. Step number 1. The second item I wanted to talk about are the rules. Guys, I see so many crews where the white hat knows the rules and maybe one other guy knows the rules. My first umpire I had said, don't look at the rule book, don't bother to. I throw 1 flag a game, it'll be a hold. You tell me if you want it in the first half or the second half. The rules, I'll throw the flag, you tell me what I got. That was my first umpire. 1 year. I had him for 1 year. You've got to have people on the crew who know the rules. And if you've got a weak link on the crew, you've got to help them get better. Everybody needs to have a reasonable idea of how the rule book works. Because it's like when you played Little League. If you put the worst guy in right field, they hit the ball to him all the time. If you got a guy who doesn't know the rules, he's the one that's going to have to make a judgment and throw a flag or not throw a flag on a particular play that he doesn't know what he's doing. He doesn't know if he should throw a flag or not because he's not certain if it's a foul or not. So I can't stress it enough. Find ways with the people you work with to get to know the rules. And I remember Kevin talking a couple of years ago about guys who've got the rule book out and it's dog-eared and it has tabs on it and it has arrows on it. And we should all be that way. We should have a good idea where the rule book is. If I had a tip for you, it would be to go to that rule book in the back 4 or 5 pages where the print is so small that I have to tip my head way back here to see it through my bifocals. That's a funny word that I like to use. Apparently not funny to you. But on that page is every rule violation, along with the yardage, along with the rules reference. And I like to look at those, and I always start with the 10-yarders, because when I know the 10-yarders, the 5 and the 15 are easy to figure out. Find a way for yourself to know and be comfortable with the rules. It's just that simple. The third item, and this is I think where I was pretty good. I don't know this for sure, but I like to think that I was a good communicator. And that's what Kevin was talking about. It is a skill to be able to talk to a coach, to be able to talk to an assistant coach or an AD or a member of your crew to be effective with the people that you're working with. I always said, you've got 5 minutes to impress a coach. You want the coach to think you're good because he's part of the system that can advance you. But how do you make him think you're good other than him watching you on the field where he's always judging you negatively? How do you get him to judge you positively? I think it's in the pregame that you have with him. You have 5 minutes with him. When you get to make him think that you're good, you know what you're doing, and you're going to help him tonight rather than hurt him. Here's what I mean. I'll take you through what I used to do. Okay, coach, who's your captains tonight? Okay, I got those 4 guys. Same thing you do. Are we right-handed or left-handed for kickers, for passers? I got that down. What kind of ball are we using? I got that down. Okay, good. I got the preliminary stuff down. I got it all recorded. Now, let's talk about penalties. Here's what I'm going to do for you, coach. I didn't say for you, but that's the implication. On a simple penalty, I'm going to walk your captain right through it. On a more complex penalty, I'm going to turn and have him looking over my shoulder at you so that he can see you and he can get your assistance on this if he needs it. And the third thing is, if it's really complex, I'm going to send my wing from your side, and that's either this guy or this guy, depending on the coach I'm talking to. Fred or Al is coming over, and he's going to give you the options on the penalty, and you're going to tell him what it is and then bring it back to me, and we'll keep your captain out of it. The last thing I'd say, regular halftime, you're going along. We're not going to start the clock when you get to the fence or when you get into the school, or whenever I'm going to start the clock, I'll wind it right away depending on what the home field scenario was. And then finally, the question that we all ask, is there anything unusual we should keep an eye out for? I had 3 minutes to make him think I knew what I was doing, and that was part of the purpose. I gathered information, but I also sold myself to him. I wanted him to think that I was capable, I was solid, I know what I'm doing, and we're going to give you a good job. And that's part of the used car salesman that we all have to be when we're talking to coaches before the game, during the game, and perhaps even after the game. All right. You also have to develop good communication with the ADs, with your own crew, with the administrative assistant who picks up the AD's phone, with your assignment secretary within the association. If you've got something going with the high school league, you've got to make certain you communicate properly with Bob Missel or with Kevin Merkel. I had a scenario last year. Kevin and I were on the phone 10 times when a coach and I disagreed on how I did some stuff. I had a play where I had a hat going up, and then I had a flag, and then a hat, and then a beanbag, and I was damn near throwing my belt and dropping my pants around my ankles because penalties were flying so fast. And it worked out okay, but again, I had to make certain I represented myself and my crew professionally because bad things happen. It's like Woody Hayes said, if you throw the ball, 3 things can happen and 2 of them are bad. And I felt like we were in the same scenario at that point. So you need to be an effective communicator with a variety of people. People skills is an art. We need, in our jobs as white hats, we need to impress the right people if we want to advance. the right people are not only your crew, the coaches that you're working with, but your assigners. You're in a pecking order within your association. There's 4 up in the Twin Cities, and don't kid yourself. They know who you are, but you're in an order, and we need to move up the order if we want to get the better games, if we want to move ahead. So you need to know your assigner and be able to talk with them effectively. And you need to know who the other guys are too, the Wolins and the Winsecks and the Dave Hallecks and the Dan Pelletiers. Those are people who down the line can help you. So know who those guys are. You need to be effective with players and captains, all stuff that you know. I'm aware of that, but do you have a way to be effective with that captain or with those players? I like to go up halfway through the first quarter and ask the linemen from both teams during a break, during a timeout, hey, is line play going okay? We all right in here, guys? I had one kid one time told me, you see 52 over there, their center? I said, yeah. He says, he's smoking between plays. I said, really? You think it's okay for you to be funnier than me? Is that what you're saying? Lineman got a laugh out of it, but it's okay to have a little banter with some of those guys, and it's okay to tell them I'm concerned with how play is going. There's nothing wrong with that. We need to establish long-term, short-term goals. When you start out, you're just looking to work one varsity game. I hope I can fill in. I can work a varsity game. We go a long way to being on a crew, to advancing our schedule, and then to working a solid schedule and some playoff games. The goals we have when we start the first year are a lot different than the goals we establish in our 5th year, or in our 10th year, or in our 20th year. And we set standards for ourselves too. That's part of those goals. I want to be good. I want to look good. I want my appearance to be sharp. I want my mechanics to be sharp. I want the information exchange between my crew to be effective as we work our ball game. Does everybody here have little tricks that they use during the game? If you're the head linesman and I'm the referee and I look at you and I do this, does everybody know what, or have a guess what that is? 5 will get you 10. I'm asking my head linesman. You know, we're 2nd and 5, and the ball is that far behind the tape or that far in front of the tape on the chain. Will you turn around and look behind you on that chain, and will you let me know if a 5-yard penalty is going to get me the 10 yards needed for a first down? A lot of crews don't use that. And I think it took me 10 years before I was like Homer Pyle. Shazam! You mean there's a signal for that? I didn't know. You learn. There's a lot of stuff like that. The simple stuff on the goalposts, on a field goal attempt, a good or a no good. We don't use that. We use yeses. Because remember Randy Shaver's sports show 10 years ago, and they showed 2 guys in the end zone, and the ball came down a yard short of the crossbar, and they both looked at each other and went, hey, that's good. Oh my, that didn't look too good. Well, one guy said no good, and the other guy thought he heard good, so he said good. And the guy looked back and said, you got good? Wow, well, I guess I got good too then. And they both went up. There's a classic mistake that none of us want to make, but right verbiage will take care of that. So lots of little signals we use on the field to help us out. I hope you guys use the same thing. One thing important to remember about this game is the kids of the show. It's not about us. Nobody comes, and I think Bobby Meslow, this is one of your quotes, nobody comes to look at the officials. We're not the show. We need to step back and let the kids have it. Let them be the show. The best compliment you can get on the football field when you talk to somebody a couple of days later, maybe at church on Sunday, really, you worked that game? I didn't even know there were officials on the field. That's a positive reflection on you, if you can do that. We had a deal, we always said, 100%. Not 99, not 98. Make sure it's 100%. That's what we want. If you're not 100% sure that's a foul, that's a foul, that's a foul, that's a foul, now I'll throw it. You don't have a foul. It's not good enough. You're better off missing a foul than you are making one up. I don't think there's anybody who would argue with that. You need to be able to handle criticism. You need to have thick skin. You need to let a coach have the last word with you. But also you need to stand up for yourself. Don't let them walk all over you. That's a fine line that it takes a long time for us to learn. Player safety, Bill's going to talk about that later on. Again, paramount. We have talk-tos. Instead of throwing a flag, we can have a talk-to. But we never compromise player safety, and we never compromise comments on sportsmanlike fouls. Don't let kids or coaches get away with that kind of stuff. We need to know who has the rules knowledge within our groups. The guys like George Wynn. George is here tonight somewhere. I know Rolf is here, Rolf Erickson. Guys like Danny Pelletier. Guys like Dick Eldridge. These are the guys who are walking encyclopedia for rules. If you've got guys like that in your group, tap them. Get help from them. Get their phone number. They're more than glad to help you on that. We need to know the rules, but we also need the spirit of the rules. How was that intended? As Bob Meslow told me many years ago, the rule of reason. Know what the spirit of the rule is and be willing to enforce that. As I wind up, we need to be leaders. We need to be leaders for our group. We need to be leaders for our crew. We need to be the person when chaos is going on around us to step in and take control. Finally, acknowledge our mistakes. It's okay to make mistakes. I've never worked a perfect game. You can ask the guys on my crew, and there's a few of them who are out here. They'll tell you, I screwed up all the time. But we learn from our mistakes, and we get better from our mistakes, and we try not to make them again. Why do we do what we do on Friday night? We do it because we love the game, because we want to provide a level playing field for these kids. We want to provide them with a positive experience, and we do the best we can. We do it so that it's a positive experience for us too, so that we have fun. Tuck, you remember the days on the crew when we break the huddle. And when we broke the huddle, I always said, hey guys, don't screw up. See leather. In other words, ball's got to be in possession when it goes down. Call the 100%ers and smile and support. Show them you're having fun. Show them you got confidence in your game. That's enough. I am done. Are we going to field questions now? Tommy? Just move on. I'm sorry, Tom was dozing in the back. I didn't do that.
I think if people have questions, they should just ask any presenter. If there's something that comes up anyways, I don't know if the three of you are actually going to be up there at the end or so we can roll it any way that we want to. I will ask one question. Did you see a common mistake made most often in officiating? Was there a certain play? Was there a certain scenario that seemed to, if there were mistakes made, they were made more often in this scenario or in this situation you saw another pattern?
I've been out observing, and this is my fix for football, and it's been terribly fun for me. It's quenched my thirst somewhat for being on the field. But if I saw a common theme, guys, it's mechanics. Our mechanics, the crews that really stand out are the guys who are rolling the wrists. You know, on fourth down, we do this. Why do we do this? Well, it's not the fourth down fumble rule. We're just saying we're going to stop the clock at the end of this play. This is a fourth down play. We're stopping the clock no matter what. But I don't see guys rolling the wrists. I don't see good communication. back and forth across the line as to who's on, who's off. I'd say the number one complaint I have, and it's something that we've stressed, is counting players. Okay, so that the umpire and the referee are counting their 11. They both got the offense. While the offense is in the huddle, the back judge is counting his 11, adjusting his rocking chair appropriately. He doesn't have a lot to do, but at that point he's going to count the 11. Then, as the quarterback or as the offense breaks the huddle, the umpire has already counted his 11. He knows he's got 11 on the offense. But what he has to do is wait for the referee to come up as the offense breaks. And really both the umpire and the back judge should go up with the referee in counting 11. Number one, that's functional. It tells both coaches, we got 22 players out here, we're ready to rock and roll. But when all three come up together, it's a beautiful thing. It really looks sharp. So I think that's probably, that one would be the biggest one. But that's something to talk about and to work on. Some of the mechanics on the referees are a little off, but that's the old stand in front of the mirror and try and look and make yourself good. Grant.
Do you find that both wing officials are keeping the coaches out of the restricted area during live ball?
Yes and no. It depends on the crew. I had one game I watched this year where we had a coach and an assistant coach. Every play they were on offense between 5 yards and 9 yards out to the numbers. Every offensive play. It was the coach and the timeout coach, as we talk about basketball grants. One of the young coaches who came out and he was listening for what the play was and he was charting it and then he ducked back. But 2 coaches every time, that's terrible, that's unacceptable. And I had a long talk with that referee afterwards about that. That wing has to get his acting right. You can't allow it. It can't happen. And there are guys who are just great. Well, you need to get back, coach, you need to get him back. This area is mine. You have it when there's not a play going on. When there's a play going on, you guys got to back out. Now it's mine. And some wings are really good at that. That's an effective skill that takes practice. You bet. All right, fellas, thank you for what you do for football. And thank you for your commitment. It's because of guys like you that kids have quality officials on the field on Friday nights. And it is because of you that the kids get to play the game. And we don't have recess. Right, Kevin? All right, thank you guys.
Nice job, Pat. Good evening. I'm Fred Bryan. Live here in the Minneapolis area. And Tom asked me to come out and talk a little bit tonight, so I'll talk a little bit about advancing in officiating, not so much from Pat's perspective, but more about if you're interested in moving up from different levels. Before I do that, Pat, I just wanted to clarify, at the beginning of your speech, did you say it's okay to tell a coach I'll meet you out by the shed? Is that what you said?
No, Fred, not at all.
Because that's what it sounded like to me. I was just clarifying that. But oftentimes, before I get started once again, there's a couple people that I always talk about and recognize in regards to helping me advance. A couple names you already heard. Rick Kruger has been a real good friend of mine, helped me throughout my career. Larry Friedman was my white hat during my MIAC years. Donald Adderley was a white hat for me. I was fortunate enough to work with Bill Lamagnier. I can't remember how many games, but I do remember we worked a bowl game together. George Wynn was also a white hat during our JUCO days. Those were some interesting days. I think George is here. But I just wanted to mention that because that's part of the advancement part to me as well, is being able to recognize those that are there to help you and give you some feedback and help you move on. When I've talked in the past, people have asked me a couple questions. They've asked me how I've advanced to get to the NFL, and they've always asked me, are there any funny stories from the NFL? So I'll talk a little bit about how I got to advance and maybe intersperse a couple funny stories. I might have to clean them up a little bit because the language out there It's pretty rough. But I'll start out with one story. I was at Pittsburgh, and we were on the sideline before the first kickoff, and Coach Tomlin walks up to me, and basically he said, "Fred, what the F kind of screwed up call was that?" And the game hadn't even started yet. And I turned around and I looked at him and I said, "Coach Tomlin, what's the matter? The game hasn't even started. What are you complaining about?" And he tapped me on the ass and said, "That's right, I was just testing you because I know you're going to screw something up tonight." Just walked away. So that was a nice way to start the game. Advancing football, without a doubt, I got some breaks. And probably my biggest break was I was working a game up at St. John's. And Mike Spanier and Bernie Kukar were there because their sons were playing at St. John's. And they had an opportunity to see me work, and they got in touch with me right away and gave me some feedback and told me some things I could do better, and told me some things that I was doing well, and suggested that I keep doing those things, and suggested that I call some different people and start making connections. And that's a big thing, is being able to make some of those connections with folks. And I would say Bernie and Mike became mentors to me, and I was able to take advantage of them as mentors. And if you have someone that is a mentor to you and you're interested in advancing, take advantage of those mentors and use them quite a bit. Now, I'm not saying everybody here necessarily wants to get to the NFL, but if you want to advance, if you're doing junior varsity and you want to advance to varsity, if you're doing varsity and you want to advance to Division III and on, those are the kind of things you got to do. You got to identify who your mentors are and use them. The next thing you got to do, I think it's real important, is first impressions. You can never, that old adage, you never have a second chance to make that first impression. So when you walk to a game or walk out on the field to a game, and Pat talked a little bit about this, you've got to make that good first impression to the coaches and the players and the people in the stands. Granted, it's not our show, it's about the kids, but they're watching you when you walk out there. And if they see a crew come around the corner that's looking disheveled, or an individual on that crew that's looking disheveled, not looking like they belong, not looking like they want to be there, not looking like, this is going to be the most, next 2 hours, 2.5 hours is going to be the most important 2.5 hours in that individual's or that crew's life while they're officiating. They pick up on that stuff, and those first impressions go a long way, and you never know who's going to be in the stands watching. Steve Thielen, he's in the room somewhere. I think it was your first MIAC assignment. I had actually worked to referee that game because Larry Friedman was gone. And we're sitting in the locker room at St. Thomas, they're getting ready to play Augsburg, big rivalry. And we get a knock on the door, and this guy comes walking in. And this guy walks in, and he had the worst Southern accent I ever heard in my life. And I just thought he was laying it out pretty thick. And he said, "My name is Ron Baines, and I'm a supervisor in the NFL, and I'm here to scout you guys today." And that's basically what he said, right, Steve? And he kind of walked out the door and closed the door. Well, Rick Kruger is working on the crew that day, too. Those of you know Rick Kruger knows he likes to jerk your chain. And I looked at him and I said, "Rick, you son of a bitch. You paid that guy. You put that guy up to come in and make me nervous because this is my first white hat game." No, Fred. It's true. He's here to watch us. I'm just as nervous as you, blah, blah, blah. And so we walk out to the field, and Jim Kowaleski, may he rest in peace, came up and said, "You guys better be on your toes because the NFL's here today to watch you guys." And the point is you never know who's in the stands watching it. NFL supervisor came to watch a Division III game, and that was also a break for me as well. Oftentimes, the elephant in the room is physical fitness. If you don't do it for football, do it for yourselves. You never know what's going on in regards to your own physical fitness and how important it is to maintain that. But it's also important, obviously, for football, that first impression. Just be real mindful of that and work as hard as you can to maintain that physical fitness, being able to physically work the game, but also first appearances and how you look. Once again, like I said, it's always the elephant in the room, and I know some people have a hard time talking about it, but it's really something to work hard on and put some focus on. Be your own worst critic. And what I mean about that is I think you can never look at too much film of yourself. And whenever you can get it, get it. Nowadays with the technology, with some of the stuff out on the internet, you can get it off the internet, you can get it, you can download it, you can get a CD, you can get whatever you can get that video and be your own worst critic. And so when you look at a game, look at it with real critical eyes and say, I could do this so much better than I did, or hey, I like the way I did that, I'm gonna work on enhancing that. That way, when you do get feedback, either from your mentors, or from coaches, or from your supervisor, you might have already pointed that out to yourself, and you can sit back and say, you know, that's good observation on that part, but somebody else picked up on what I can do better, or somebody else is picking up on what I'm doing well, and I can continue to improve on that. So being your own worst critic, I think is a key. That's something that I always try to do. Also, I'll talk a little bit about setting goals. When I first got into officiating, I didn't necessarily have a goal to get to the NFL, and I wasn't sure if I really wanted to do this. How I actually started out is I started out coaching. I started out coaching over at Minneapolis North. I was a JV coach over there. And after about 3 years, the head coach, Richard Robinson, who happened to be my high school coach when I was in high school, walked up to me one day and put his arm on my shoulder and said, Fred, you ever think about officiating? And I think it was his way of telling me I wasn't doing so well as a coach. So I thought about it, and I actually got away from the game a little bit and then came back to it and started officiating. And so I never really thought I had the goal of getting to the NFL, but after a while when I started getting into it and liking it, I set a goal for myself to be the best I could be at whatever level I was working at. So if I was a JV umpire, I said I'm going to be the best JV umpire I can be. If I was a JUCO, well, I started out as a line judge, but moved into umpire. If I was a JUCO official, I was going to be the best I could be. And then I decided to set that as a goal and let everything else take care of itself, and not necessarily look to the pie in the sky, the NFL. I mean, it's always out there. And if your goal is to move up from JV to varsity to JUCO to Division III, whatever, I mean, put those things out there, but really focus on where you're at, what level you're at, and work hard on being the best you can be at that level. And trust me, everything else will take care of itself. If you start looking too far ahead to those goals, you're gonna, start thinking too much about the next level. You're gonna start thinking about some other things, and you're just not gonna be able to focus on what you need to be focusing on, which is what's right in front of you right now. I already talked about taking advantage of your mentors, and if they give you feedback, listen to that feedback. I've seen people be in situations where I've mentored them, or I've seen other people mentor them, and they really haven't listened to the feedback. They've diminished it, or they've kind of poo-pooed it, or kind of gave it lip service to, yeah, okay, and then they kind of leave the situation and not follow through on the feedback or not listen to the feedback. If someone takes the time to give you that feedback, I encourage you to listen to it and implement it as much as you can. Secondly, work hard. The people looking to bring people up from whatever level it is want those officials that work hard at it. Sometimes they're called officiating junkies, and I know it's oftentimes has impact on your personal lives, young families and things along those lines, and personal situations come into play, and you oftentimes can't address what you need to all the time. But be real focused on working hard and putting the effort in, improving the folks that, like I said, when you walk out on that field, whether it's JV, high school, whatever, that next 2.5, 3 hours is going to be the most important time during that day for you to get that job done. That's what they're looking for in regards to bringing folks up. Before I move into the next aspect, I'll tell you another quick story. We were working a game out in Denver, a preseason game, and our back judge, his name is Greg Wilson, and he's a LA motor cop, and he works in South Central Los Angeles. So we call him the enforcer sometimes. We call him a lot of things, but we call him the enforcer sometimes. And he had one penalty where a Denver defensive back grabbed the receiver, picked him up, and just body slammed him. And he threw the flag right away and had a foul for unnecessary roughness. Great call. kind of a crusading call because nobody else had the flag, but there probably should have been 2 or 3 flags on the play, but Greg had it. And so the next time I'm on the sidelines, Jack Del Rio came up to me, and I think he's either the linebacker coach or the defensive coordinator for Denver. I can't quite remember. I know he used to be head coach, long history in the league. And when he was coming through the league, that kind of tackle actually was probably a good tackle. And so he was upset about it. And he come up to me and he said, "Fred, you got to help that Greg Wilson out." And I looked at him and I said, "What's the matter, coach?" He said, "That last call he made, unnecessary roughness, that was terrible." I said, "Coach, I actually think that was a good call. How do you want me to help him out?" He said, "Well, I think right now he's just putting a little bit too much air on the side of caution." He just turned around and walked away. What can you do when you have coaches that feel that way? Consistency, judgment, and philosophy. Be consistent in your judgment and be consistent in your philosophy. Coaches, I think one of the things that drives them nuts the most, and one of the things that supervisors may be looking to pull somebody up or decide not to pull somebody up, that drives them crazy is when you're not consistent. If it's a hold in the first quarter, scores tied 0-0, it should be a hold in the fourth quarter when they're driving for the winning touchdown possibly, and vice versa. If it's not a hold in the first quarter, don't make it a hold in the fourth quarter. Be consistent with that. Develop a philosophy around how you're going to do things like make holding calls or have crew philosophies. Be real consistent when you apply those. Inconsistency, I think, is what, like I said, what drives coaches and supervisors, I think, nuts the most. Officiate for the whole game. Each play lasts, 7.5 seconds. Don't just officiate for those 7.5 seconds. There's 2.5, 3 hours out there that you need to be officiating for the whole game. If you're taking plays off and or taking off between plays during the dead ball periods, people will notice that. So officiate for the whole game. How many of you heard the term MIBT? Make it be there. Well, you want to be an MIBT official. You don't want to be an MIBOT official. Anybody know what that stands for? Make it be over there. You want to be that official when it's fourth quarter, you're driving for the touchdown, and let's say you're the back judge. You want to be that back judge that says, "I hope it's a pass deep in the end zone so I can be here and officiate that play." Or if you're the umpire, you want to be the umpire that says, if it's a draw up the middle, I'm going to work my good mechanics and then watch for holding on the backside or something. You want to be that official that says, make it come here, not the one that says, "I hope it's over there on that other side." Because like I said, supervisors will pick up on that. This applies a little bit more to the NFL and maybe some of the Division I programs, but they're looking so much more now at everybody's personal life. And it's always in the news, somebody getting caught lying about something or doing something stupid or being somewhere where they shouldn't be. And just be mindful of that. I'm not going to sit up here and preach and tell adults what they do with their personal lives, but if you're interested in moving forward, that's something you got to be real mindful of in the future. With the social media nowadays, you can't hide anything. Every picture that is taken electronically on a phone or digitally somewhere is 2 or 3 clicks away from being on the internet. And you could be in a situation where it might have been an innocent situation and that picture ends up out there on the internet and you've got to start answering some questions. So just be mindful of that. Like I said, I'm not going to preach to anybody about that. But it's a big issue that is real relevant nowadays. Just talking a little bit about what's happening here in the Midwest. We've got supervisors here. Is Nevin still in the room? He's here. I haven't seen Tom Brawl, but we've got local supervisors here that are always looking for officials. If you don't know who they are, start asking those questions and start talking to folks. There are other officials here that have gone through similar process that I have and have started moving their way up. Steve Thielen's in the room. You're working MAC games this year on a MAC crew. You know, same process, started working local high school stuff and moved his way through Division III and started working for Bill Crowell in the Big Ten. And what is it, the Midwest
Fishing Alliance, and now the COC, Collegiate Officials Consortium.
Collegiate Officials Consortium, Bill Crowell with the Big Ten. So there are opportunities here if that's what you're interested in, or even if you're just interested in moving up from junior varsity to varsity to maybe some of the local Division III, Division II kind of stuff. There are opportunities here, so be mindful of that and try to take advantage of that. And then lastly, I'll end with a story. Once again, it's an NFL story. But one of the, you know, I love being in the NFL, and I love what I do, but one of the things I miss is being out there doing it for the kids. Pat talked a little bit about it. We're out there for the kids. It's their show. So being in the NFL, obviously I can't talk about doing it for the kids, but there was a player in the Sunday night game, Dallas, New York, who kind of reminded me about how I could still do it for the kids. It was a New York Giants player, and he was complaining about being held. And you always get those complaints. But he came up to me and said, "Mr. Umpire," he said, "I'm being held on just about every play." And he said, "The bad thing about it is, I know my kids are at home watching, and they're probably sitting on the couch crying and saying, 'Mommy, why is that bad man holding my daddy?'" He said, "If you're not going to call holding for me, call it for my kids." And so I looked at him and I said, "Okay, I'll see what I can do for you." And I kind of walked back to my position chuckling. Very next play, he gets held and gets taken down. I mean, it was clear as day. I had a flag down and my referee, Tony Craney, had a flag down. Throw the flag, march off the penalty, walk up to him. I said, "Are your kids feeling better now?" He goes, "Yeah." So always remember, do it for the kids, and from my perspective, if I can't do it for the guys on the field, I'll do it for their kids at home watching. So, any questions?
Brad?
Yes, sir.
How do you evaluate your effectiveness as an umpire from the offensive backfield as opposed to being behind the defensive line?
How do I evaluate my effectiveness as an umpire, offensive backfield, as opposed to being on the defensive side? Well, first off, I'll talk a little bit about when we made that switch 3 years ago. I was hesitant about it. I didn't know how much I was going to like it, if I was going to have trouble with it. After about the first 6 games, I decided I really loved it. And I decided that because things are going away from me. They're no longer coming at me. And I've got so much more clear view of what's happening. And I don't have to worry about self-preservation as much. Now, there are times, obviously, where I go back to the defensive side, and I'm there in the last 2 minutes of the first half, last 5 minutes of the game, and then anytime the ball's at the 5-yard line and going in, I'm back over there. As far as evaluating my effectiveness, like I said, I love it. I think I'm more effective now in the offensive backfield than I was in the defensive side of the ball. I think on the defensive side, we don't see as much of what's happening with the offensive lineman's hands in regards to holding, and don't see clearly, at least from my perspective, what's happening on backside plays that are flowing away from me. Because when they flow away from me, it's real easy for me to turn and then work backwards from guard, center guard to the backside tackle. So I think I'm more effective on the offensive side. And I think if you talk to most of the NFL umpires, they'll feel the same way. There are some guys that I think still wish we were back on the defensive side primarily, but I think we're more effective. The thing that we miss, though, is defensive holding. And a lot of teams have figured that out. And we're trying to adjust our position, our mechanics, to see if we can see defensive holding a little bit better than what we're seeing it now. We see a lot of ton plays with the pull and shoot. Defensive guy will grab a guard or a tackle and pull him out of the way, and somebody will shoot up through the gap to try to block the punt. And then we're seeing it a lot when the quarterbacks are in shotgun. It's an obvious passing play. You'll see a defensive tackle grab the guard or tackle and pull him to the outside, and the defensive end will start behind him and shoot up that gap. There's a couple teams that are real effective at that. and we're trying really hard to pick that up. But otherwise, I think we're more effective on the offensive side.
Fred, I'm wondering, now in the NFL and even prior to the NFL, being on the inside with the players, I'm wondering if you have a habit of talking to the players, and if you do, what kind of things you say to the players?
I try to talk to the players as much as I can. Now, being on the defensive side, I have to do more talking when I'm there than I am on the offensive side, because oftentimes, I'm starting 12 to 14 yards back, so oftentimes by the time I get to the pile, they've already started policing themselves and getting themselves up. But I try to talk as much as I can. My voice right now is real scratchy because I'm getting over a cold, but I always used to evaluate my performance around communication depending on how my voice sounded after a game. If it sounded similar to this, then I knew I was doing a lot of talking and a lot of communicating with the players. I try to kill them with kindness if I can, and I also try to kill them with compliments. If I see someone holding up, not hitting somebody unnecessarily, or somebody does a good job of getting in front on a low block rather than hitting them from behind, or if another player is talking to his teammate that might be getting a little upset, I'll come up and say, hey, nice job on that play. There's a play in Green Bay where a Washington offensive lineman drove a Green Bay defensive lineman 5-6 yards downfield and just pancaked him. I waited till I got back to the offensive huddle, but I told him, hey, that was a great drive block. You kept your hands in the right spot and you kept your feet moving, kind of stuff. So I try to talk to them first when they're doing things good. Then when it comes into a situation where something's happening, where they're pushing the envelope, I'll get to them and say, hey, that last block was, make sure you're getting all the way in front, or, watch your hands, you're getting really grabby, kind of stuff. And then when it comes to a situation where you got to get in there and really start breaking players up, you got to be real direct with these guys, and you got to have thick skin, and got to be willing to listen to some pretty foul language while you're out there as well. But communication is the key, and I start with the positives and start out on a positive note with those guys whenever possible. And it starts for pregame. I watch film of every team that we're going to be having next week. I'll watch the end zone view of the offensive lineman, and if I see something happening well or something suspect, I'll actually talk to the lineman in pregame. I'll walk up and say, hey, 77, I saw last week on the backside, looked like you were a little bit late on one of those blocks. Just be careful on that kind of stuff. And believe me, they appreciate it. They come up and they say thank you. Or I'll say, sometimes your lineman is suspect. You need to get up a little bit. We'll be working with you today, kind of stuff. So yeah, communication is the key. So. Any other questions? Well, thank you, and I'll turn it over to Bill Lemon.
Now, at least we're chatting, and Freddie did about 2/3 of my presentation, so that's good. The beer won't get warm tonight. But so I thought what I'd do before I actually started to that presentation we're going to do about philosophy and gray area. I've got a little exercise here I want you to do. And if you've seen this video, do not tip it off. But here's the directions. Let me just get it up and started here. This is going to apply to your officiating. Your instructions are simple. I want you to count how many times the players in white pass the basketball. There's going to be 6 people, 3 in white t-shirts, 3 in black t-shirts, and each group will have a basketball. Forget the team in black. Watch the team in white. And for about 30 seconds, how many times do they pass the basketball back and forth?
How many times the players wearing white pass the basketball?
I don't care how many times they dribbled it.
How many passes?
All right. Who wants to be that guinea pig volunteer? How many?
12.
12, okay. 14?
16.
15? 14.
16.
Okay. We're all over the place. Huh? We're all over the place. Anybody see anything else in the video?
Gorilla.
A gorilla. How many people did not, be honest now, how many people did not see the gorilla? Okay, you're going, what gorilla? What, you mean gorilla? Let's go take a look. And then we'll find out too how many times you did pass the basketball. 15. But that's not what's important. All of a sudden that gorilla just jumped out at you? Even stopped for 5 seconds in the middle and waved at you.
This video is from Sept25.
Alright, so what's that got to do with officiating? Are we supposed to have pretty good peripheral vision and a focal point too? You know, if we say that you got to watch the point of attack, or you got keys and you got zone, this is zone coverage, okay? And can you miss the gorilla in here? Sure you could. But the point of it is that sometimes you can get so focused on one task that you miss the gorilla, okay? You miss the gorilla. And part of our job in officiating is the gorillas are darn important. And Dave Perry used to have a saying to us that if you were out in the middle of the Everglades and it was 5 miles to the safest haven, okay? 5 miles. Don't worry about the crickets. Worry about the alligators, okay? Because if you're worried about the crickets, you ain't making it, okay? So this is kind of the same thing done with a psychological study. So some interesting things are out there that I think if you get into, and we're going to talk a little bit as the presentation goes on about some of these things, and I'll move up front now. See if my password still works here to do this. All right, now we got it. Okay, so we're going to talk about doing some self-evaluation, some philosophy about officiating, some common sense, but it's going to really boil down to is how do we minimize the gray area in officiating? Because we know that every time we go out there, every time there's calls to be made, there's 3 buckets that we can put them in. And right now those buckets are pretty even. We wish we could take and say, hey, here's a whole bunch of things to put in the black bucket, the white bucket, but unfortunately it's the gray area that gets in our way. And it's going to be about philosophy. That's what's going to make the difference for how you're going to take and minimize the gray area. It's never going to totally disappear, but we've got to find ways to minimize that gray area so that we can more put things here or put things here. But the reason we're putting them there is based on common sense and philosophy of the game. Now, if you've been officiating for a while, you know that during the course of a game, there are times you have doubt. We don't like to admit that. But if you have 120 plays in your high school game or 150, 60 plays in your college game, there are plays out there that you've got doubt. You've got to recognize that. If you recognize that, you can turn that into a strength. Because when you recognize it, you start to apply the philosophies of the game. You've got a much better chance of getting the call right or getting help. But when we get stubborn, when we dig our heels in, and we make a call when we had doubt, and we stick with it, that's when we have our problems. So part of it is recognize when you got doubt. You don't know how to admit it to a coach, you won't admit it to the players, but you ought to admit it to yourself. And if you don't think you had doubt on 120 games or 120 plays in your game, shame on you. Okay? Then you're the person that's got the greatest eyes in the history of the game. Huh? And you've all worked with somebody who's like that. And the guy that thinks he's got the greatest eyes in the history of the game, is going to turn the game upside down. Okay? You see the call, you make the call, but when you got some doubt, rely on those philosophies. So, you know, we're going to talk a little bit about what really goes into judgment, the criteria for judgment. But I started back in 1973. Some of you weren't a twinkle in your father's eye at that time, okay? But in 73, when I was in my first local association meeting in the suburbs in Chicago, I remember one of the veteran officials, as the meeting was ended, you know, we looked at some 16 millimeter film, we had a good presentation by one of the vets, and this one other veteran just got up and he says, here's the bottom line. You either got it or you don't. So as a new young official, I was kind of sitting there, and for the next couple of years, that statement bothered me. Because I was wondering, geez, if he's right, he's one of the respected guys. Do I got it or don't I got it? And over the years, I started to think about, well, if that was really true, I think I understood what he meant. But if that was really true, what are you doing here? If this meeting and the other meetings and the film you watch and the rule study that you do, if it's not going to help you improve your judgment, you're wasting your time. Because you either got it or you don't. So if you got it, you can leave. If you don't, you ain't going to get it anyway. Right? So what's the purpose of all? Well, the real purpose is he was wrong. He was wrong. Okay? And we can do things to improve our judgment. You know, we all come into the game with different God-given talents. You know, I wish I was, what, 6'3", 6'4", Freddie? 6'3"? I wish I was that height instead of 5'8", 5'9", you know? I wish I could run like a deer. I don't have those talents, okay? Those are God-given talents. But we can take what we've got and we can build forward. And just like players can get better, officials can get better. You know, there's players that come into youth sports, and they're the stars of the team. And then they move on to high school. Maybe some of them still are the stars of the team. But some other players who weren't so noticed at the youth level, all of a sudden start becoming the premier players in high school. And then all of a sudden, from high school to college, some of the stars in high school aren't the stars in college. Some other people that we never even heard of start to become the new stars. And the same thing true on to the NFL. Everybody that's playing in the NFL didn't come from Division I schools. Everybody wasn't an All-American. But somebody saw something in them that made them coachable. And they kept developing their talents. And those are the things that we're going to look at here. So these are the factors that I think go into judgment. You know, if I ask you to define judgment, obviously it's your ability to get the call right or wrong. But what goes into judgment? Okay? First thing is your rules knowledge and your mechanics. It was said earlier by Pat, you got to know the rules. If you don't know the rules, you can see the play perfectly. Perfect. And you're going to get it wrong. True story. First football game I ever worked. It was a Sunday afternoon youth football game, crew of 3. I'm working the wing. I played in high school. I played on the service team, but I didn't play college. But after I got out, you know, I knew everything there was to know about football. A friend of mine got me involved in officiating. And I'm out here working the wing, and this quarterback rolls my way, throws a pass to the sideline. I get there, I see this kid go up in the air, I see him come down, I signal incomplete, out of bounds. So after the game in the parking lot, 2 veteran officials working with me. One of the officials says, you know, I don't know if you're going to be a good official or not, but you look pretty good on that pass play over on the side. Composed, took your time, nice mechanics, sold the call. I was feeling pretty good. First game, a nice compliment from the vet. What did the rookie do? Opened his mouth. I said, yeah, it's too bad he didn't get the second foot down in bounds. I hope you got that one. Because I did that day. And they just kind of looked and go, so, well, you know, we don't do a lot of pre-games for youth football. But how about next week when we work again? How about you give us about 10 minutes maybe on inbounds, out of bounds, catch, no catch? Oh, I'm just proud as a peacock. Compliments, get to run a little pregame next week. You know, I'm on the move, you know. So I get home and I call this buddy of mine who's an official. And he goes, well, how did it go? I said, well, great. I says, hey, got a nice compliment. I'm going to do a little pregame next week. He goes, pregame for you football game? He said, what'd you do wrong? What'd you screw up? I didn't screw anything up, Jim. This is what happened. He goes, you weren't. Get the book out and look at the book. Only got to have 1 foot down in bounds. Oh, come on. Yeah. I look, sure enough, open the page, there it is. Hits you like a sledgehammer. I don't even want to go next Sunday, okay? I don't want to go. But I end up going. We get in the parking lot, and I said, let's just cut to the chase. I kicked the call, you only got to have 1 foot down in bounds. This wily old veteran looked at me and says, yeah, but next week when you're working the Bears game, that's going to be a heck of a call. So what impacted? Did I see the play perfectly? Sure did. But I didn't know the rule. Okay? Didn't know the rule. So my judgment was negatively impacted by lack of rule knowledge. So you gotta get in the book. It's going to impact your judgment. Okay? Your mechanics are the same thing. You're the wing official, you're moving down the sideline with this runner, and he's going to the ground. What's one of our fundamental cardinal rules? And we heard Pat mention this one too. See leather. So this kid goes to the ground, you're the wing official, I'm the ball carrier, I'm going to the ground, and I'm facing you with the ball right here when I hit it. So whether the ball comes out or not, you can see leather, right? So now, I don't do you a favor this time. As I'm running down the sideline and I'm going to the ground, I'm going to the ground with my back to you. Can you really see leather? You better be patient, because if you're quick on that whistle, you're going to get away with it. You're going to get away with it, you're going to get away with it, you're going to get away with it, because he hung on to the football. But one of these times on the way to the ground, he's going to lose it. And you're going to be quick on that whistle. And you're going to be saying to yourself, why did that happen now? Your mechanics were perfect, you were in the right place, but you better recognize you couldn't see the play. And you need that help from somebody else. And if you don't get the help from somebody else, it's this simple. More close plays to fumble down are fumbles. Call it a fumble. And I heard an official say to a kid one time on a football field after the kid got up screaming at him, he ruled fumble. And the kid said he was down. The official looked at him and said, if you spent more time in the weight room this summer instead of chasing the skirts, you'd have hung on to that football. Okay? And the kid just looked at him. He comes off the field and he says to the coach, he says, did you hear what he told me? And the coach told him the same thing. Spend more time in the weight room instead of chasing girls, you'd have hung on to that football. And then he came down to me and said, but it was a fumble, Bill. You should have corrected him. But it was interesting dialogue. So, but the video shows over the close plays, hundreds, thousands of plays, the percentages are there to call them fumbles when you don't know. Just like when we got catch, fumble, or incomplete pass. If it's that close and the ball's out, they're incomplete passes. Don't try and have the greatest eyes in the history of the game and say that was a catch, he did something common in the game, it's a fumble now. You couldn't even start and stop the stopwatch on it. So do the call that's accepted. And it'll lead to crew consistency too, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But your mechanics are important. You've got to be in the right place at the right time, but you got to recognize mechanics are a high percentage thing too. They're not always allowing our guy to start working with that coach right now. Okay? And they were happy to back out of it. But you got to be able to let something go, empower your people, you'll get more back. Okay? So people skills, I think, way, way underestimated for what they can do for us as officials. And I think if you talk to the people on your crew, I'll bet you can find different things, all of them, but particularly the referee, have to do in regards to those people skills. All right, I just got a call. Nevin's got a game, okay? And we show up at the game, and one of our guys can't make it. But there was a game just before us. And we didn't get a chance to see it, but two of the guys who worked the previous game are still there. Don't know anything about it except the guy on the left and the guy on the right. And this is a big game. We got to have one of these two guys working with us tonight. You picked your guy already? Huh? Not hard, is it? And if we can do that decision without ever seeing him work a snap, That's what the coaches and the players and fans are doing to us every time we walk on the field. And that was said earlier tonight. So, of course, who are we picking? The guy on the left, right? We're taking Adonis, right? Because of the impression that he made. First impression, right? We agree? Anybody disagree? I disagree. I'm taking the guy on the right. He's going to make me look better. Are you true? Huh? But I was talking to Tom Wallen before we came here, and he said, we're both wrong. We're not taking either one of these officials. Okay? He had something else in mind. Okay? So he might have a point. He might have a point. But it is that first impression. And Freddie hit it earlier. Do it for yourself first. Do it secondly for the game. Okay? But do it for yourself first. All right. There was a book I read probably about, in the mid-'80s. It's called The Inner Game of Tennis. And it was written by an author, a professional tennis player by the name of Tim Galloway. Tim Galloway played on the tour. Nobody ever heard of him, okay? But he was in the Jimmy Connor, Beyond Borg era, okay? And he used to be the guy that got knocked out in the first round. Okay? But he wrote this book called The Inner Game of Tennis. And his whole premise on it was the conscious mind versus the subconscious mind. And again, you're saying to yourself, like the gorilla thing, what's this got to do with officiating? Well, I think it has a lot to do with officiating. Because if you're out there consciously trying to officiate, instead of subconsciously officiating, you're slowing yourself down. Your brain's the computer. That's the subconscious state that you want to be in. But the only way you can get to a subconscious state is through conscious practice. You know, we get a lot of practice at false starts, defensive offsides, encroachment, pass interference, holding. We get a lot of practice at those. But what about the unusual play that comes up when it's a illegal kicking of a loose ball? When it's the batting, is it a new impetus or force? When do we get a chance to practice those things? And Galloway was a believer in that you could do a thing called mental imagery to get ready. And he was talking about tennis. That he believed that if you closed your eyes and you practiced yourself doing it right 10 times, that your brain created 10 brain traces it didn't have before. Now when it came time to do that skill on the tennis court, you had 10 rehearsals already. You were ready for it. And that's what our film study a lot of times does for us. You know, we watch plays, and you know what we do with film? All of us do this, and it's not wrong to do it. Good call, incorrect call. Okay? We do that all the time. But the critical thing is, why did it work? Why didn't it work? And if you can get in the head of the official for either the real good call or the one that's not so good, and really get that person to lay it out on the table that what broke down, then you can learn from that. But when it comes time for the mental rehearsal, you picture yourself doing that play 10 times correctly. Now, I do this a lot. I've done mental imagery now, and I wrote an article that was in Referee, and it was up with the USA Football website. It was called The Inner Game of Tennis. And it was taking the ideas and the principles that Galloway had about the subconscious mind versus the conscious mind, and about mental imagery, and how we could apply it to officiating. So I do it a lot as a referee. I do it over what I think is our toughest call, pass fumble. You might say, well, what's so big about that? Well, it decides who's got the football at the end of the play. If I call it an incomplete pass, he may just keep the ball for one more down. If I call it a fumble, 9 times out of 10, Team B is going to be on the ball. Because the offensive team is blocking this way, they don't even know the ball's on the ground for an instant behind them. Team B's coming this way, they see the ball on the ground, huge advantage. So I better be right on that call. We're talking about team possession. So I take those plays where they've been really handled well, and I take and I close my eyes at 10 times, try and picture that, okay? And when do I do that? I travel a lot, I stay in hotels, I have a hard time sleeping at night sometimes. So when I'm laying there in bed and I can't sleep, I think about that play. And I try and do it correctly 10 times. And you know what happens most of the time?
by about repetition 5 or 6, I fall asleep. Why? Because I'm doing something I like and it relaxes me. I'm in a subconscious state. So I never get to 10. I'm usually asleep by 5. All right? Another point that Galloway made in this book was about the greatest athletes in the world. And he cited Ted Williams, Michael Jordan, Wayne Gretzky. What separated them at the highest level of competition from all their peers? Could Michael Jordan really shoot a basketball any better than anybody else in the NBA? Just pure shooting? Nope, they can all shoot a basketball. But why could he do it? Because he saw the defense in slow motion. The subconscious mind was working, and he saw the defense in slow motion. The defense saw him like a hurricane. Same thing, action's happening, but they see him in in a hurricane. He sees them in slow motion. Ted Williams said he could see the seams on a 90-mile-an-hour fastball. Probably an exaggeration, but what it really meant was that didn't look like a 90-mile-an-hour fastball to Ted Williams. If you or I stepped in the batting cage and somebody threw it 90 miles an hour, I'd be wincing. Even if it was down the middle, I'd be cringing. I couldn't even begin to think that swinging a bat at a 90-mile-an-hour fastball. But as the level and the so it isn't the batting skill, it's the mental skill that made Ted Williams better. That's the difference. He had a mental gift. He had all the physical talents like everybody else, but he had a mental talent. And you can work on those mental talents through rehearsal, through practice. Gretzky the same way. Why could he make defensemen fall down? Goalies looked like they didn't exist. Because he saw them in slow motion and they saw him like a hurricane. You've been out on the football field one day, and doesn't the game look in slow motion, and you're seeing everything. And you're going, man, this is easy. You're in a subconscious state, you're in the zone. And you go out there the next day or the next week, and the same style of play. And it's like you can't get into it. It's like it's moving too quick. What's the difference? It's not the kids, it's you. You're not in a relaxed subconscious state. So you've got to find some ways to get yourself there. You've got to find your ways in preparation to get yourself relaxed. Sometimes it's outside distractions that cause it. If we really could get our finger on that one, we wouldn't be sitting here, we'd be selling books. Okay? But you've got to find a way to get yourself in the zone. Galloway said that, he used another example of the high school kid, scores 8 points a game. And now he goes out and one night drills 30. And what do they say? He's playing over his head. Galloway says you can't play over your head. You just don't play to your ability all the time. And if that kid could get himself in that zone, he'd do 30 every night. But he can't do it. He's consciously fighting. When the consciousness is there, it's fighting the subconscious. Let the computer work. So get your repetitions in consciously, and then take and do it subconsciously when you're out there. Sounds easy, but you've got to find the magic to have that happen. All right, some philosophies that we need to recognize when we don't get a good look at a play. First one, game control and player safety. That better be at the forefront, especially at the state the game is in now, at the high school and college level. Okay, and the NFL, you know, in some ways I think it's kind of unique that they get fined, they get suspended, and then they sue the league for the injuries they have that they give to each other. That to me, that's just so hypocritical. But the bottom line to it is, especially at the amateur sport level, you're the guardians of the game. And I think Kevin hit on it, and I think we're seeing it too in the college game. Our people are doing, the biggest change was going to come from what the coaches could do with their kids. All we can do is write the ticket. And I think the coaches are doing a better job. We're not seeing as much of it. Okay? It's still there, but it's up to us to make sure we don't pass on it when it does happen. But the game's in trouble. And I'll tell you what, if We have the ejection rule now for the targeting, for the crown of the helmet or hits the neck head area of defenseless players. Mark my words, if the high school game continues to have problems with high hits, they will go to the automatic disqualification rule, the same as college. And you say, wait a second, you got instant replay. I don't care about instant replay. We got to make that call on the field. Don't make that call thinking that's a crutch. You've got to make that call as a guardian of the game. And it isn't, they just changed the rule. Okay? The foul is the same, but the penalty changed. So if it was a foul a year ago, it's a foul now. The only difference is you can't play football anymore today. That's not my concern. Okay? I want to be right if we have that call, but it's not my concern. The judge has passed sentence. All I'm doing is making the arrest. Okay? So you got to think of it in those terms. But if the high school game continues to have a problem with high hits, mark my words, they will go to mandatory disqualification. Okay? All right, holding. We're going to show you a couple categories of holding in another slide. But you've got to be consistent on that holding call individually and as a crew. And the best way to do it is by buying into what I'm going to show you on categories. The same thing's true on pass interference. If you buy into the categories we're going to show you on pass interference, you'll find yourself being individually and crew more consistent. When it comes to formations, most of the time we're talking about crickets again. Formations. Understand when the formation, there's nothing you can do about it, it's obviously illegal, and the one you can massage. Okay? If you want to be technical about the rule, you can have flags every play. But if you understand formations and you understand how the defense is playing them, you can kind of massage that and do some talking and work with the kids to get it to be right, so you don't have 10 flags for illegal formations. You don't have play clocks, so we'll forget that one. Spotting the ball on first downs. Fields, the high school football fields, particularly the college football fields today, they're phenomenal with the field turfs, aren't they? Well marked. I'll bet you don't measure half as much as you did years ago. I mean, some of us that remember the grass fields where they marked them every 10 yards, that was the only lines we had. We had to do a lot of measuring back in those days, because we couldn't tell. Heck, half the time this line went this way and the other one went that way. I mean, or they disappeared somewhere in the middle. You know, but today's fields are so well manicured, so marked. Okay? Measurements aren't as needed. But you know, you can do another thing to help yourself out, unless you really like to measure. When you're at a change of possession, and you've just had that punt return guy run, and whether he runs 10 yards with it, or whether he runs to the side and runs out of bounds, can you really tell me whether he went out at the 42, or the 42 and a quarter, or the 42 and a half, or the 43? Can you really tell me? Are your eyes that good? Put the ball at the edge, front edge of a line. So if you're at the 42, you know you got to get to the 32. Okay? And you can eliminate measurements. They interrupt the game. The beer gets warm while you're doing that. So take and put the ball at the front edge of the line. Can you do it all the time? Absolutely not. You get in the red zone, play it straight up. But you're out starting a new series where a guy just caught a pass for 34 and a half yards, and you're chasing him from behind, and you're that good, you can see the exact spot that ball was at from behind. Put the ball on the front edge of the line. The game's tough enough. Most complicated, toughest game there is. To officiate, to play, to coach. Do yourself a favor. Keep the chain crew over on the side, you officiate the game on the field. Forward progress. You better have a good handle and understanding of forward progress. When is a runner not under his control anymore? You can't be an official who says, you know, I'll let that kid break free and run for a touchdown, but I won't let him fumble. He's either wrapped up or he's not wrapped up. And you can buy a second or two to see that. But if he's wrapped up, don't let him fumble. Don't let him break free and run for a touchdown. It's got to be one or the other. The runner can't get the best of both worlds. You can be patient on your call, and patient just as a second. But understand, you can't just let the runner have the best of both. he's getting knocked back, I'm gonna let him break free, now he loses the ball, now I'll come back and say, no, it's forward progress. You better know whether he was wrapped up or not. If he's lost his control, then you gotta shut it down. It's that simple. So, but buy into the philosophies of the game, and this is what's gonna happen for you individually and then your crew. Individual consistency. If I ask you right now, whether it's your first year or your 25th year, are you consistent on your holding calls? Are you consistent on your pass interference calls? I would expect you to say, yeah, I am. I make a mistake once in a while, but I think I'm pretty consistent. Would you agree? Huh? Is there anybody who wants to raise their hand and say, no, I'm not consistent? I didn't think so. So we are. We're individually, we're pretty consistent, right? I can get better, and I do make a mistake, but I think I'm pretty consistent. Okay, Nevin's got another game, and he said, I get to pick the crew. Now, I haven't worked with a lot of you guys here, but I get to pick the crew. So I pick 5 or 7 people, just bang, 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 bang. And here's one of the guys picked, and you're going, you're kidding me. You put me with Freddie? Oh my God, he has 12 flags a game. You know? And Freddie's sitting there going, you're putting me with Wallen? He hasn't thrown a flag in 2 years. You know? Oh my gosh, you know. So what are we doing to the game right off the bat? We've got consistency, individual, but when we put the crew together, we're going to drive them nuts. And we've all heard it. Either you're not consistent or your crew's not consistent. Well, how do we blend? How do we get that together? Well, you better be talking. You better be seeing if you're on the same page. And if after a game or two something's out of sync, you got to have some of those sit-down meetings and say, we got to. Something wrong here. You know, I worked the old arena football league, and I had a young head linesman and a young line judge. And this head linesman, he had 11, 12 flags a game. And this line judge had 1, 2, you know, same game. I mean, you know, the NFL switches guys at halftime. These guys should have switched every quarter just to see what, you know, it was like, how come everything's happening over on this side of the field? Doesn't anything ever happen over here? And it was really 2 things. Too technical on calls, and maybe need to get a little bit more into calls. And after about 4 years, 5 years together, we saw 3 or 4 flags from this official, and we saw 12 melt down to about 6. And we started to have a little better balance on the field. Okay? So those things happen, but if you don't address them, you're going to be out there on that field like this all the time. Now, if the coach is smart and needs a call, he's throwing it over here. Right? You know, he's not throwing it over here, you can't get the call. You know, you got to draw blood to get it. So coaches are smart too. They'll pick up on that. Maybe that's why they went to that side of the field for certain plays. But we've got to have individual consistency. Then we've got to develop crew consistency. And then the last thing is about conference or league consistency. And if your supervisor is telling you this is how they want the game called, you do it that way. You can disagree, you can mumble about it, you can take it with your crew, but if your boss is telling you this is how we're doing it, you do it that way. Okay? Because he's responsible for the consistency of week to week. Now, we've all heard this, right? You get to the game site, and that's not what they called last week. You know, right? We've all heard it, right? That's not what they called last week. Those guys did this. Maybe it's true, maybe it's not. That's a common coach thing. 9 times out of 10 when they say that, if you went back and talked to that crew, they'd go, we didn't even have that play in our game. You know, I don't know what he's talking about. That's coaching, okay? But take the argument away. If the boss says this is what it is, that's what it is. But you got to have individual, and then you got to go to crew. And if your crew's not consistent, you are having some miserable days out there. We've said it before, don't try and have the greatest eyes in the history of the game. If you do, you're going to be in more hot water than not. If you know the call, you make the call. But I'm telling you, if you got the greatest eyes, you know, you obviously then Freddie needs to get your name over to the NFL office. You know, we talked already, we have doubt on the play. And if you go through the course of a game and haven't had some doubt, I think you're kidding yourself. The number one mistake we make is complacency. We knew better, but we got complacent. And I'll bet no matter what position you work, you could make a list of about 4 or 5 potential complacency mistakes that you might make. I can tell you one or two of mine. One is, you know, I walk past the huddle, I turn around, look at my umpire, and I go, 11. My umpire's going, boy, that Bill's good. He's got eyes in the back of his head. He didn't even look at the huddle. And he turned around and said he's got 11. Right? How do you do that? You know? It was easy. I didn't count. You know? And what do I get away with? Most of the time, don't they play with 11? Huh? Probably 1,000 plays go by, and they play 999, maybe even 1,000 sometimes. They play with 11. So when I go and do this without counting, I'm getting away with it. But I'm setting myself up for that one time they played with 12 and I didn't catch it. Then I find out later, and I say, why did that happen today? Why did I miss that count now? It was an accident waiting to happen. Because I've been going through the motions, and getting away with it. My other one, quarterback, throws the pass. I take a peek. Good pass interference call, Freddie. I look back, oh good, 12 still standing. Because if I keep taking that peek to see how good Freddie's call is, one of these times I'm going to look back and number 12 is going to be laying on the ground. Number 9 is going to be standing right over him. I'm going to know what happened, but I didn't see it. And I'm going to say to myself, how did I miss that hit on the QB this time? Why? What call? Why did I peek this time? Well, if I didn't recognize I was peeking those other times so I could correct it, it's an accident waiting to happen. If you're that wing official who sees the back of the player instead of being patient, you're blowing a whistle, you're going to get away with it 99 times out of 100 because he hung onto the ball. But that one time, the ball's out, it was a fumble, and you've already hit your whistle, it's too late. It's over. Inadvertent whistle time, or you're going to sell a call down that's not down. So don't set yourself up, but you've got to recognize it. You've got to recognize it. And if you don't recognize you're making some complacency mistakes and getting away with them, then when the snake comes out of the grass and bites you, you're going to say, why didn't I see the snake? It was there and I just stepped on it. You've got to recognize it. But I'll bet from your position, and the next time you're out there, particularly the wings, see how quick you're blowing that whistle when a play ends. Or are you that back judge that when the play's ended and belong to your head linesman or line judge, or maybe the umpire or referee, you were the first whistle. We've all been out there when it's our call and we rule this guy down, we heard somebody else's whistle go off first. Well, you know what? They're setting themselves up for an inverted whistle. They might have been right this time, they might be right the next 6 times they blew the whistle. But they're going to have an inverted whistle because they're buying into an area they don't belong, and they're tooting the whistle when they shouldn't. We've got all these fundamental things we say about officiating, and then we just cast them to the side. And we get away with it, we get away with it, and then bang, chaos hits. All right, so let's go back to some of those holding categories and pass interference categories. If you buy in to these categories, I think it's going to improve your consistency on how you call holding. First of all, recognize that we want to have an advantage gained. Okay? We want an advantage gained, whether it's the pass interference or all the holding. Was there an advantage? If you can say to yourself on a holding call, instead of getting your flag out and saying that's holding, if you can see that and say that's a takedown flag. The next time, here's your grab and restrict. But the ball went that way and this is over here. No foul. Grab and restrict, he turns and the runner goes right off his hip. That's a grab and restrict point of attack. If you can get yourself to say, instead of say holding to yourself, if you can get yourself to say, here's the category. And then when, you know what, here's the other thing categories are good for. When Coach Freddie says to me, Bill, what did he do? Well, he held him, Coach. I know if you called him for holding. I heard the announcement, I saw the walk-off. What did he do? Well, Coach, it was a grab and restrict, right at the point of attack. You'll be surprised, you'll open some eyes when you do that. And maybe they won't like it, but maybe they'll accept it. When you can get specific and say, Coach, that shirt stretch, he was running in quicksand. He couldn't even move his feet because of that shirt stretch. That hook and restrict was right there at the point of attack. Now you're giving him a specific detail for why that way. He knew it was holding. Why was it holding? It will get you to be more consistent, and if your crew buys into it, and again, will a mistake happen? Yes. But between that umpire and referee or the wing officials on holding calls, we'll start to see more crew consistency on those holding calls. Same thing for pass interference. If you can look at that thing and say, that's a hook in the turn. It's not a foul for me to put my hand on your hip. Touching is not a foul. But a hook and turn is playing through his back before the ball gets there. That's a foul. You know? An arm bar, a cutoff. If you can say to yourself, that's cutoff. That's early contact, playing through the back. If that's what gets you to throw the flag, you're going to be more consistent. All three of the officials that call pass interference buy into this, more consistent. Right? And again, when the coach asks, Coach, it was early contact. It was a hook and a turn. You know, the hand was there, turned her. Okay? But just remember, between those two things, funky's not a foul. Okay? Just because it looked funky doesn't make it a foul. It's not one of the categories. So be able to put those into categories. If you do that, you're going to see consistency individually and crew-wise. Let the game come to you. Okay? Don't get, you know, we can get jazzed up for a game, we can be hyper for a game, but once that game starts, let it come to you. You know, we heard the phrase, make it be there. Absorb what happened, take a second to analyze it, think it through. Again, we talked already about knowing the rules. If you're sharp with your mechanics, it'll look better too. We talked about the people skills. I like the phrase that you want the call to go over there, you want it here. It doesn't mean that you're ready, that you're saying bring it here because I'm throwing. Bring it here because I can say that's a no call. And they bring it here and I can say that's a call. That's a foul. I'm ready for it. Give it to me. Okay? Now we're not masochistic. We don't need it every week, every play. But we do want to be able to be there to say I can handle this call. All right, and wrapping it up on this. You know, we worked in the Arena Football League, we had a commissioner, David Baker. He used to come to the clinic every year. And he used to leave us with this. You're the guardians of the game. And, you know, when he first said that, that's a pretty neat compliment. You know, the guardians of the game. But, you know, what he was really saying? You're responsible for the game. You're the guardians of the game because you're responsible for it. And we alluded to him about kids, and Freddie told a story about, you know, about the NFL player and his kids at home. I've always referred to it, whether they're kids here, kids here, kids here, they're kids, okay? They're first graders. First graders. My wife was a first grade teacher for a long time. What do parents like to see come home in first grade on their kid's paper? A nice smiley face, sticker, smiley sticker, you know, something nice from the teacher on there. What do football players want on their helmets? Smiley faces, actually, right? You know, stickers. You know, they want that on their helmet. It's affirmation, right? We don't get that opportunity as officials, right? But the kid, they're kids. Even the college and pro guys at heart, they're kids, right? And you can work with them and use your people skills, and you can have them, it won't work 100% of the time, but a lot of times you can get them eating out of the palm of your hand if you have good people skills. But remember, the kids. You get that chance for some affirmation, give it to them. They love it. Okay? I told the Bill Carolla this year about the disqualification thing. I said, you know what you need to go out and do? You need to get some little black stickers that say, in white, say DQ. And some white ones for the referee, you know, the others that say, in black, say DQ. And every time an official gets one of those, you know, with a DQ for the high hit, we can put that on our hat. And about halfway through the season, you know, Freddie's got 12 on his helmet, you know. Owen's got 2. Lamani, you don't have any. You know, you haven't made any, what's going on, you know? And of course, you know, being facetious about that, And he just went, yeah, I can see that happening. He says, there won't be any players left. You guys will all have all of your hats. But the bottom line is we like the information. We don't probably get enough of that as officials. But you know what? If we don't understand too is that the expectation is to get the call right. That's the affirmation. Nobody's going to tell you about it. Nobody's going to pat you on the back. But you're going to hear about it when it went south. Okay? So keep in mind, it's about analyzing it and figuring it out. And if you got something that didn't go right, you know what? If you got up in front of the group and told them why it didn't work, you know what? You won't get sympathy. You'll get guys that will probably go, man, been there, done that. Or now I can avoid it happening in my game because I know what you're talking about. If we could really share why we kicked one, instead of excuses, there's a difference between saying why I kicked it and having an alibi. Okay? But if you could really say, here's why I kicked it, here's what led up to it. Maybe my head wasn't in it for the last 3 plays because I let that coach get in my ear. So I can't let that happen again. Okay? Maybe I wasn't prepared for this because of my mechanics. Here's what broke down. Okay? If we could do that for each other, we'd see the bar being raised by all the officials. And people would be understanding, it would be chastised. And if the guys want to sit there and go, you know, how many times have you heard this in meetings? You know, something, you heard about something in a play, the guy might be sitting there and over here they're going, did you hear about that call that Freddie had? Oh man, I can't believe that call. You know, da-da-da-da. But Freddie gets up and tells about that call. Takes the argument away, doesn't it? What are you going to say over there about it? I'm not saying you would. But what are you going to say over there about it when Freddie's just stood up there and told you about his call? You learn from it, you know? And now if you want to take a snipe, and sometimes we're our own worst enemies, if you want to take that snipe, shame on you. Your peers will turn you off or say, I don't want to hear about it. But talk, you know, if you can bring those to the table, if something really went well, tell them why too. But we need to look at film to find out which bucket we're going to put it in. And then we need to find out why it goes in that bucket or the other bucket. Okay? If you do that, you're going to find the level of your officiating just started to rise. Okay? Any questions, thoughts, comments?
I think most of the guys in here are high school or D2, D3 officials. We don't have the luxury of instant replay. If you, as a referee, get conflicting signals or calls, say on the sideline, complete pass, incomplete, how do you handle it as a referee?
Conflict resolution, okay? First thing I'm going to say is this, and this is the rule on our crew. Do not officiate this game to replay. Do not officiate the game to replay. Okay? Replay is a great tool, but it's not there to bail you out from your responsibility. Okay? You officiate. You know the call, you make the call. You don't know the call, you got doubt, use good philosophy on how to handle the situation, and then if replay can help us, good. But when it comes to the thing about conflicting calls, whether it's a catch, incomplete pass, fumble, what, a block in the back, and I say it's a side block. How do I handle that? The first thing is, 9 times out of 10, by the time I get down to the 2 officials, you will have resolved it. You'll have said, and I'll ask you what's the conflict. You'll tell me what's the resolution. Boom, that's what we go with. I'll announce it, move on with life. But every once in a while, at 1 time out of 10, digging heels in, I haven't even seen the play. So how do I do it? First pregame of the year, I tell them, here's how I'm going to solve it if you don't. I'm going to want you to tell me, I'll go to the official who made the call first, the flag, or whatever the conflict was. What do you have? Tell me what you had and why. I'm listening for chinks in the armor. And I tell them, if you got a chink in the armor, put it on the table. Don't get stubborn. What are chinks in the armor? I thought he got it in the back, Bill. I was pretty sure he got it. I think, maybe. Those are chinks in the armor. Okay? Now your partner is pretty emphatic, Bill. I had that guy, Gunner, all the way down on this. Hands were in the side. I know he came down on his face, but the block was totally in the side. I saw it clean. There's no chink in the armor there. I'm going to go right back to that official and say, he's trying to help you. Take his help. 9 times out of 10, they'll say, all right, Freddie, thanks. Because what's Freddie doing? He's taking ownership. If a guy's willing to take ownership for it and you got doubt, why wouldn't you let him help you? You know, there used to be a saying when I started to officiate, don't go fishing in anybody else's pond. You still hear that? Don't go fishing in anybody else's pond. I heard that for years. Here's my philosophy. You can fish in my pond anytime you want. Anytime. Okay? I only have one caveat to it. Catch a fish, not a minnow. Okay? Don't go after the minnows. Let's get dinner. I don't even like fish. But if you're going to go fishing in somebody else's pond, catch a fish. Don't go chasing the minnows. Okay? So I want you to get it right. Let's not hear about it all week or listen to it on ESPN or hear about it from the boss. Let's get it right now. Okay? But listen for chinks in the armor. But tell your guys, put your chink out there. If you got a chink in the armor, don't hide it. Put it out there. He's trying to help you. So that's how we'll do it. Now again, if both guys are strong on it, the guy's got a flag down, and there's no chink in the armor, we'll go with the flag. Okay? Equal guys and equal responsibility to call, we'll go with the guy who had the flag. Right? So that's how I do conflict resolution. But I put that out there the first week of the season because I don't want week 4, we've never discussed it, and now we've got this play, and I go with Freddie on this call, and then going home, you're mumbling to your buddy, the only reason he went with Freddie is because him and Freddie go drinking after the games. Him and Freddie know each other for the last 20 years. That's the only reason he went with Freddie. You know? And human nature does come into it. And I wouldn't lie to say that if you had a closer relationship with somebody, maybe there's a bigger trust factor. But let them try and do it as much by what they're telling you versus what you want to interject into it. Let them be the deciders, okay? But human nature does play into it too.